Hello, a very warm good morning to all of you and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to today's The Hindu newspaper analysis, where we take a look at the Delhi edition of today's newspaper, analyze the important articles relevant only for your examination perspective and not look at some of the other noise created thereby. This will help you ensure a focused preparation. And while we are discussing these articles, we shall also be trying to understand the art of answer writing. And we will take up a couple of practice questions so that you are able to understand what to write and how to create your answers. Now, 20th and 21st of July was the time when we had the Unacademy UPSC Summit. Now, I hope you have been attending the summit, you have been engrossed in the various different sessions which have been conducted. Now, yesterday you had a series of various different lectures and sessions which were conducted. Today again, you have multiple different eminent personalities who shall be on our platform and telling you about the realities in terms of time management, in terms of keeping yourself motivated, and also the issues of practical implementation on the ground. So do attend the session today and get a chance to listen to these eminent personalities. And also, we have curated certain specific sessions for strategy. For example, the strategy about how to prepare for UPSC from the scratch, how to go for the preparation of geography optional, for example. All these various different strategies and the other sessions will be there on our app. So register for that summit now with the link provided in the description below. Having said that, now on the event of this summit, we have also launched a special price offer for all the candidates who want to get a comprehensive preparation done for the various different subjects taken together, and the comprehensive preparation of all the general studies, where you will have the opportunity to avail various different lectures by all the famous faculties across the country and the famous educators across the country. So a complete GS plus CSAT plus test series, all of that for a 15-month UPSC subscription shall be available at 23,999. Now, this is where it becomes absolutely affordable for many of the candidates, because there is a slight reservation that I do need more time to prepare, but my subscription ends in 6 months, or I have this time limitations on me. We understand that this preparation is not something which can be bound by the time zones and the time limitations. So keeping that in mind, we have launched and announced this particular special offer. Avail this as soon as possible. Now, taking a look at the topics that we are going to hold a discussion for today. So today we are going to have a discussion for 7 different topics. 3 of those topics are the ones which are relevant for your mains examination, and 4 of the other topics are the ones where you need to have some idea for the prelims preparation. So here, what is the gender gap in education? So this is as per the World Economic Forum's gender gap report, which has been released, and it talks about the educational gap or the gender gap which exists in the educational sector. So this is relevant for your GS paper 2 and GS paper 3. This has appeared in the FAQ page of today's newspaper. Will local job quotas pass the legal test? This is a follow-on story from what we had discussed yesterday about Karnataka's attempt to pass or introduce a legislation introducing local job quotas of 50% in managerial roles, 75% in other roles for the local population. So what are the legal hurdles that this bill will face once it is introduced? And we had already seen yesterday about the attempt by Andhra Pradesh, Haryana and Jharkhand, and how they have not been very successful. So we are going to analyze this a bit further. This is relevant for your GS paper 2. Then, CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board, plans to check violations in plastic waste trading regime. What is this plastic waste trading regime? This comes under the ambit of EPR norms, that is, Extended Producer Responsibility norms. So what is that EPR norm? And what is this concept of plastic waste trading scheme? We will understand that and its relevance in controlling the pollution levels overall. This is relevant again for your GS paper 3. Then, certain articles relevant for your prelims perspective: prevalence of non-communicable diseases tripled and infectious diseases have doubled over the past few decades. So, why is that? That is something we are going to be analyzing very briefly, that why these non-communicable diseases are increasing, and states like Kerala are showing increased amount of morbidities owing to these diseases. So why is it that Kerala is an outlier? Is that an issue with the public health system, or is it the exact opposite, that the public health system is working fair and fine enough? Then center reviews cases of Chandipura virus, which has led to acute encephalitis syndrome in various different regions. So 3 states are where the center is carrying out the review. So what is that Chandipura virus? What are its various different implications? That is something we are going to study. Then tea industry seeks higher ROTEP rates, remission of duties. That is what the tea industry is seeking. And at the same time, it is seeking to impose anti-dumping duties from the tea coming from Nepal. So what are those issues? We are going to talk about that. Then animals acquire genes from bacteria. This is a unique study and a unique find which has appeared in the science section, where it has indicated, and it is being indicated, that a certain small species of organism, almost to the size of a single strand of hair, that has been known to garner some of the properties from bacterium in order to fight infections. So this is a unique opportunity which is presented, whereby we can also have better disease fighting abilities, and that opportunity will open up for greater research. So that is also something we are briefly going to take a look into. Starting with the first article of the day. The first article is, what is the gender gap in education? What do we mean by gender gap? Gender gap, whenever we talk about, it in simplistic terms refers to the lack of parity. That is, you will have the male population and female population. If they are not at the same level, that induces a gender gap. Be it in political representation, be it in economic terms, be it in educational qualification, that induces a gender gap. That gender gap is something which is appalling and which is significantly a worrying sign for the entire world. Now, this gender gap report is released annually by World Economic Forum. Now, that becomes relevant for your prelims. Ideally, I would advise you that prepare your own brief list of these reports and which is the organization which releases these reports, so that it doesn't become burdensome for you immediately before the prelims examination, where you are scampering through various magazines, etc. So like that, on a daily basis, if you do this, this will be easier to consume. So World Economic Forum releases this gender gap report. Now, it is the entire aspect, or the entire objective behind it, is to understand the various different types of inequalities which are prevalent when it comes to the male and the female population. Now, this report is prepared based upon the parameters of 4 different indices. You have the sub-economic participation and opportunity. Then you have educational attainment, health and survival, and political empowerment. These are the various parameters: economic participation, the labor force participation that we talk about, what is the level at which they are, the gross enrollment ratio, the learning outcomes, etc. That is the educational attainment. The parameters of, let's suppose, the survival rate and the health issues that are faced. There, what is the incidence of those issues on men as compared to women? That is something also indicated. And also the level of political participation. All of these comprehensively give you an idea about the participation of women in an economy and participation of women and the role of women in the society. Now here, the various different reports for subsequent years have indicated that always it is Iceland which has remained on top for the past few years now Iceland has remained on top in terms of that gender parity index. Now, how do we know that which is the country which has remained on top, or how does the ranking happen? So basically, based upon these factors, each of the countries, they have a rating which is done between 0 and 1. And that is the index which is fixed. 0 means a complete gender gap. Complete gender gap. And 1 reiterates complete gender parity or equality. Gender parity. Okay. So you have the naming or the numbering done for each of these parameters, and then accordingly the country numbers are gained. So generally you will find the good performers in this particular parameter are the Nordic nations or the regions of northern and northwestern Europe. So Iceland has been doing particularly well for the past decade almost now. Then other good performers are Norway, Sweden, Finland. These are the good performers in terms of gender equality. Now, when it comes to India, in the case of India, India has ranked 129 out of 146 nations which have been represented. 129 out of 146. So it is not a particular number to be proud of. Now here, if you take a look at it, then basically across the globe, what has been indicated is that when it comes to the economic participation and political participation, that is where the gap is huge. The inequality is amongst the highest. Now that is something which needs to be worked upon. Now here in this article, we are going to discuss, and the article basically discusses about the fact that when we talk about the educational sector in India, be it the primary sector, be it the secondary, higher secondary, or the, let's suppose, the graduation level, there has been a gender gap. But it is also something where we have seen significant amount of progress. Now, all these data pointers collected and indicated by WEF, World Economic Forum, that is collected by which organization? So all these data pointers across the globe, they are collected by UNESCO. Okay, again relevant for your prelims. I will write it down here itself so that it is easier for you to revise. So data collected by UNESCO. Okay, now here in the case of India, when we talk about the enrollment of students in the various different levels of education, that gives us an idea about how many girls are participating, how many males or boys are participating in the education, and that has thrown open a mixed set of data pointers. What we are going to do is, while we are not going to ratify these data pointers, but try to understand that if the girl-child enrollment ratio is increasing in certain areas, what can be the reason behind that? So that we get a way forward going ahead about how to have a better and a more significant participation of girls in the educational sector. Because you have to understand, this represents the human capital of a country. Any particular country, its ability to grow, its ability to do well, its ability to stay fit and thereby produce more amount of human resources and more efficient human resources is dependent on the economy, education, and so on. So education is an important parameter. When we talk about India, in our own country, that educational data about the enrollment, etc., is carried out by two different sets and two different survey sets. So you have the UDICE Plus, that is Unified District Information System for Education. This gathers data for the aspect of primary sector and secondary level education. So primary and secondary level education, higher secondary as well, level education. And when we talk about AISHE, or All India Survey on Higher Education. The name in itself suggests you that this gives you an idea about the participation rates in higher education. Now observe the data pointers. As per UDICE Plus, girls make up for 48% of school population. First of all, taking a look at the positives. The positive is that this number has increased quite significantly over the past couple of decades. So that is a good sign for a country, that the girls are basically going to school at a faster rate and in a greater proportion. But there, let us then break down this data at various different levels and let us try to understand why is it that in certain portions you have more enrollment, certain ages you have less enrollment. So at kindergarten level, you have 46.8% of enrollment for the girl child. Now, in comparison to class 1 to 5, this is lower. In the age group of classes 1 to 5, it is 47.8, but it is 46.8 in kindergarten. Why is it so? So there are multiple factors. One of the factor here is that the number of schools, how close the schools are. When the girls are really young, when they are of very tiny tot and formative ages, at that point of time, many of the parents don't feel comfortable to send those girls to far away schools. So that is why greater number of schools, larger number of schools means that for every region you will have a school in closer vicinity. That is when the parents feel comfortable. And to add on to this fact, you also have another important factor, and that is the number of female teachers in the school. The number of female teachers, it has been found out, if it is more, then there are more number of girls who are willing to go to the school. They feel more comfortable. And it has been found out by surveys that where you have a dominance of male teachers and lesser number of female teachers, the female participation reduces thereby. So these are a couple of important factors here. Then observe that the enrollment in the level of class 6 to 8 increases quite significantly, 48.3%, which is quite significant. After that, there is again a dropout. Why? This is attributed to a couple of factors. One factor is the fact that as per the educational norms, no detention policy, you have the case that till class 8, nobody does or nobody is detained in any particular class. You don't have examinations and you move on into the next level. So after class 8, for the first time when the examination comes, that is when many of the people feel uncomfortable. And this is something which is reflected even in the case of the male child participation. There also it has been found out that the number of boys and their dropout rate increases substantially after class 8. So that is the case where immediately after class 8, the dropout happens. So that tells us what? That we need to tinker with the education system and the procedure in such a way that the examinations, they are not imposed heavily up till class 8, but students are basically made to learn the importance of these examinations. They are made habituated with these examinations so that immediately the class 9th does not pose a burden. And also, having some regular kind of tests, that ensures a better learning outcome as well. But that needs to be proficient enough. Otherwise, what happens, what we are also seeing as a kind of a spin-off effect is that due to this no detention policy, the learning outcome in the students, that has reduced quite drastically. For example, if you compare the students, let's suppose a decade back or a decade and a half back who have done their schooling at that point of time and the students who are doing it right now in many of the cases, the survey has found out, for example, you have the ACER survey, the Pratham survey, all of that have found out that the learning outcomes have reduced. And how do we measure that learning outcome? By giving simple problems to various different students of different levels. For example, a class 5th student or a class 8 student will be given a simple addition, subtraction, multiplication, etc. So that gives you an idea about the level of proficiency. So that is where if the learning outcomes are decreasing and for the first time when they face the examination, they drop out of the learning system itself, that means you need to progressively ensure that some proficiency tests are there and they keep on learning something after the other. After all, they have to face the mad race of the world once they graduate and they have to be prepared for that. Then, classes 11th and 12th, again the girl participation is significant. Now, researchers have argued that basically, and this is contrary to the male child proportion. In the case of male child or the boys, you will have the dropout rate to be substantially higher after class 10th. Now, why is that? It is primarily because of one factor where majority of the boys in poorer sections, in weaker sections of the society, they have to earn some income as well. They have a burden of income as well. And the survey indicates, the article indicates that those girls who actually complete the class 10 standard, they are the serious ones. Majority of them are serious ones. So they have a natural tendency to finish the entire education. So that is why the article argues you will have a greater amount of girl child participation. But at the same time, you also have another factor, and that is the free education is provided up till class 8th. After that, you have some amount of money that is, or fee that you have to pay for education. So that also ends up becoming a kind of disadvantage and discouraging factor for many families with lower level of income. So this is what the data pointers indicate. What can we extract from these data pointers? The factors involved in the various different types of enrollment ratio that we have seen, and why is it that girl-child participation in the education sector is varying from one region to another. So here, the number of schools. The number of schools have to increase. So here, the example has been cited of the state of Gujarat. Now, Gujarat, for example, did not have that many amount of higher secondary or secondary schools which were built. Much of that burden was laid off on the private sector. As a consequence of that, the enrollment ratio in Gujarat for the girl child that has reduced. But compare it to the backward states of the country like Bihar, like Jharkhand, like Odisha. There, these states have significantly increased the number of schools. As a result of that, many of the states are achieving more than 50% of the ratio of girls. That means that you have more number of girls in many of the states and more number of girls participating in education in many of these states. So that is a kind of a symbol or a kind of a way forward provided that provide the schools in close vicinity. More number of schools mean you will have more distributed network of schools. Girls will feel comfortable, they don't have to move for a larger distance. Then transportation. Transportation from the residence to the school is also a financial burden. So that is where, for example, certain states have provided free bus passes, like Tamil Nadu has provided free bus passes. Now, in that case, it is always a kind of a motivational factor that the cost is not prohibitively high. Many of the other states, such as the case of Bihar, free cycles are distributed. Now, all of this ensures that transportation doesn't become a burden. And that transportation, commuting from your home to the school, that is always burdensome. That is also seen as a vulnerability. Majority, and you have to link it with the social ills as well. So you will observe that it is in that journey between the residence to the school, when it is of a far away distance, that is where many of the crimes are committed. So that is where the parents also feel hesitant. So if that is sorted out, we can ensure greater participation. However, this scheme of distribution of bicycles, etc., did not work particularly well for the state of Rajasthan. So there, the issues are associated with the number of schools. Then, presence of female teachers. Girls feel more comfortable when you have more female teachers, better enrollment, better participation. And also you have infrastructure impact. And this is also something, infrastructure, when we say, proper sanitation, hygiene, toilets, etc. Now, while the government provides funds for construction of these toilets, but the maintenance, the upkeep, the cleaning of that is more important. Just construction of a sanitary pit is not going to solve the purpose. You need to ensure that it is well kept. Only then will you have a better participation. So that is another reason why from classes 8 to classes 9th and 10th, you see a decline in the girl child participation. It is the age of puberty, and that is when the necessity of a clean toilet is very, very essential. That also, if you don't have clean toilets, not only will the girls not tend to come to the school, but at the same time, you also have the probability of increased rate of infections out there. So that is basically, these are few of the contributing factors which can be thought as the problems. It can be thought as a way forward as well, why you need to have more girl children in the school education, and what is a way to achieve that. Okay, so in this article, what is it that we have discussed? What is this global gender gap report? So this gender gap report is released by WEF. Okay, WEF, data collected by UNESCO. Then after that, also the aspect of the data pointers we have seen, and then we have seen the analysis and the factors involved, as well as the way forward. Okay, this is what you have to represent if a question comes there. Now, the practice question: what are the reasons for lower enrollment ratio in girls at the school level, and suggest measures to improve the same? A 10-marker question where you have to write 150 words. So here, in the introduction, what do you write? Do you straight away start with the reasons? No. You first of all start with the aspect of what do you understand by enrollment ratio. So enrollment ratio, whatever you understand about that, write it in your own words. That it talks about the participation of boys and girls and the ratio of participation of boys and girls at various different stages of education. In India, it is collected by UDICE Plus for the education or for the enrollment in various different levels of school. That is your introduction. Then you have to talk about that India has been over the ages struggling with lower participation and lower enrollment ratio of girl child in the schools, even though the situation has massively increased and massively changed for the better for the past couple of decades. Underline this. Underline the fact that it has changed for the better. That gives the evaluator an idea that you are keeping a track of what has been happening for the past couple of decades and you have not simply rectified the latest data. That is very important. So even though the situation has increased or changed massively over the past couple of decades, at the same time, there are still a lot of challenges and still a lot of scope for improvement. Understanding the various different lacunae due to which, or the various different factors due to which we have a lower enrollment ratio, they can be enumerated as, and you can write it in a bubble format, a list format, wherever to make the presentation better. Then list these factors, the number of schools, and for each of them, write a couple of sentences. It should not be that schools, transportation, like that. At least a couple of sentences, along with examples as well. So give the example of Gujarat, Jharkhand, compare them in the case of number of schools, transportation. The example of Tamil Nadu, Bihar, you can give that example. Then the number of female teachers, that you can talk about in a couple of sentences. Elaborate upon it. So the process of writing has to be bullet point, heading, let's suppose transportation, underline this, and then write a couple of sentences about it. So bullet, subparagraph, bullet, subparagraph. That is how you have to weave the answer. After that, eventually, you talk about the fact, now because it is a 10-marker question, so you don't have to provide a separate way forward here. But in all these factors that you have highlighted, that conclusion should include the fact that the participation or the enrollment of girls in the schools are improving, shown by the various different states, and that provides us a unique opportunity to learn and utilize the demographic dividend provided by 50% of our population. No country has ever developed and can ever imagine to develop without the participation of the 50% of the labor force. And there in the body part, you can highlight various data pointers that we have discussed, just a couple of them if you want. That 48.3% is the overall participation. That is something you can highlight. Or you can also talk about the fact that IMF report indicates that with a greater participation rate of women in the labor force, the GDP can grow by almost 3% more. So those data pointers you can highlight and then ensure authenticity of the answer is maintained. Okay? Now, moving on to the second article. Will local job quotas pass the legal test? This is a follow-on to the discussion that we had yesterday about the Karnataka State Employment of Local Candidates in the Industries, Factories and Other Establishment Bill 2024. Now, what is this bill about? The Karnataka State Employment of Local Candidates. Local candidates in establishment, industries, etc. 2024 bill. Now it talks about reservation of 50% of managerial roles for the local population. At the same time, it talks about 70% of reservation in non-managerial category, 50% in management roles, 70% in non-managerial roles. Managerial roles. Okay. That is what it talks about. It also talks about that how do you decide the local population. So an individual who has lived in that state has got a residence or a domicile of that state for the past 15 years. And along with that, proficient reading and writing skill in Kannada language. That is essential. Okay. So the criteria for the local population is twofold. One is basically domicile or resident for 15 years, and then proficiency in Kannada. Now, those of them who did not have the Kannada language in their education and in their secondary and higher secondary, they have to pass through a proficiency test. Then they will be eligible for this. Now, as per this bill, the various different companies, they will have to hire the local population. In case they don't have that local population pool, let's suppose it is found out that they don't have the required talent, then this bill also provides for a 3-year training period, right? 3-year training period. That 3-year training period is to be provided so that the local population can be trained. Other than that, even after that, if certain organizations, certain establishments, they don't have that much amount of talented pool, let's suppose, in that case, the bill provides for the provision that individual organizations, establishments, they can apply for certain remission, certain rebate. But there also, this ratio should not come below 25% for the management roles and below 50% for the non-managerial roles. This is after the rebate once the organizations apply separately. That is the entire nuance of the bill. Okay. So, what does the bill say? The criteria for reservation 50%, 70%. The conditions of those who can avail the reservation, that is domicile as well as the proficiency in Kannada. Then in case you don't have that pool, then 3-year training period that the companies will bear. Then other than that, even after that you are unable to fulfill them, then after that you can apply and get some rebate, and you can reduce the number but not below 25 and 50%. Now, we had seen yesterday as well that various different states have basically tried to introduce this earlier. You had the case with Andhra Pradesh, which introduced it. Then you had Haryana, and latest you have Jharkhand. Now, in the case of Haryana, this bill was quashed by, or the act which was passed, it was quashed by the Punjab and Haryana High Court, and now that is in the sub judice of the Supreme Court. Whereas the case of Andhra Pradesh is also sub judice. In the case of Jharkhand, the governor returned the bill that it is not constitutionally correct, it is not legally correct, but the government, again the state government, passed it with a greater majority and it became an act. But in all these three cases, one common factor which has been indicated by this article is the fact that the introduction of the bill was the key point. After that, as these bills were stuck in legal quagmires and legal troubles, the state governments did not push for them vociferously. That means it is to assuage certain political sentiments. That means the larger benefit of the population is something which is not that prime importance. That is what the article argues. Now here you have to understand that why are the states doing so? It is because of the growing resentment. And we had discussed that how that growing resentment has led to various different types of social disorders and social issues as well. But basically, when we talk about, let's suppose, the Andhra Pradesh bill, it also decides upon the residency factor. Haryana bill also decides upon the residency factor, and Jharkhand, the bill also decides on the place of residence factor. Now, all of this can be detrimental to the industry. That is what the industry body is saying. What is the argument from the side of the industry? Now, the industry is saying that, look, in the case of Karnataka, the industry has been quite vociferous. From Mohandas Pai to Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, all the leading startup owners and significant amount of industrialists, they have voiced their opinion against the bill. What is it that they are saying? They are basically saying that this will limit the talent pool from which you are hiring. Now, it is okay that you have given a 3-year period for training, but for those 3 years, you will not have the talent pool, or let's suppose someone coming from Maharashtra, working in Bangalore, now, or working in Mysore. Now, that individual, if they get to know that after 3 years, they might get fired, then will that talent or will that skill or skill set be tempted to work in that organization anymore? No, they will start searching for jobs in other parts of the country. So, the industry is saying it can lead to the flight of skills. That is, moving away of the skilled people, right? Other than that, it will discourage foreign investment. Foreign investment, which is a major factor in driving of economy for countries like India. Then, as a result of that, you can have the population moving out of that place, which basically means that now it can lead to a downward spiral in the local GDP, right? So, GSDP can also get impacted. That is the argument made by the industry. So, the industry is basically advocating that let there be a fair ground and a fair competition between the population of the entire country, and then let the best candidates be selected. Otherwise, they will have a restricted pool from which they will have to select. Okay? Now, when we talk about the nuances of the bill faces legal hurdles. What are the legal hurdles that it faces? It basically stands in violation of the fundamental rights, or part 3 of the Indian Constitution. So here, as per Article 16 talks about the aspect that there should be no discrimination in terms of employment. Now, the part 2 of Article 16 and part 3 of Article 16, they are very clear in this fact. So, part 2 of Article 16 tells us that no citizen shall, on the grounds only of religion, race, caste, sex, descent, place of birth, residence, or any of them, shall be ineligible or discriminated against in respect of any employment or offices under the state. So here, place of birth and residence cannot be a discriminatory factor in terms of providing employment, especially public employment. So this is again standing violated. Then, after that, you will observe that nothing in this article shall prevent Parliament from making any law prescribing in regard to the class or classes of employment for employment in the office of the government or any local or other authority. Any requirement as to residence within the state or union territory prior to such employment or appointment. In a nutshell, what does this mean? In a nutshell, this means that the onus for this, even if you create a condition like this, the onus is on the Parliament of India. It is not with the state legislature. So this comes under the ambit of what? Parliament. Okay, and not the state legislature. When it comes to the aspect of domicile and the factors about the residences, there also Article 35A tells us that Parliament alone, not any state legislature, will have the power to enact such a law for the residential requirements. So it violates Part 4 of the Constitution as well. Then after that, the Part 3 of the Constitution, then after that, it is also violative of Article 19. Article 19 provides you freedom of movement, freedom to follow any profession, freedom to reside in any place of the country. Now, all these three subparts of Article 19, they stand to be violated. If, let's suppose, an individual who is not eligible to get jobs due to this reservation in a particular state, that freedom of employment or freedom of profession, that will be violated. Then freedom of movement will be violated. Freedom to choose to live in any part of the country, that is a constitutional right. If tomorrow I want to live in any particular state, it is the right that the Constitution of India provides to me. Now that is vitiated. So that is why you have many significant articles being violated, significant articles of the important part of the Constitution being violated if this bill comes to force. That is why it is one of those things where various different states have introduced it but not went ahead with the following it up. For example, the case is with Jharkhand. Now Jharkhand, once the governor basically opposed and returned the bill to the state legislature that it will be violative of the fundamental rights, the state government passed it with a greater majority. And that happened almost now 7 months back. December 2023 was when it was passed with a greater majority. But after that, there has been no movement in this, because they are also aware that it is going to incite a PIL, a sub judice case. So that tells you about the importance of having a semblance of thought, having a proactive thought about if you want to do something good for the local population, this is not the way to achieve it, but there are multiple other ways that can be done. So that is something which can be extracted. Now what can be done? More job opportunities at the ground level, more creation or better economic growth at the ground level, provide upskilling, all those factors that we had discussed yesterday. Okay. Now, after that, we move on to the third article. And the third article is about CPCB plans to check violations in plastic waste trading regime. So before we come to the aspect of EPR plastic waste trading regime, first of all, CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board. Now, for your prelims examination, what is important? First important thing is whether it is a statutory organization or non-statutory organization. When we say it is a statutory organization, means what? It has been made or it has come into existence as per a legislation, as per an act, right? That makes it statutory, right? So here, CPCB has been established as per an act. Which is that act? Water Act 1974. That is when the Central Pollution Control Board had been established, and underneath it you had the State Pollution Control Boards also being established. By various different acts, for example, eventually you had the Air Act of 1981, which empowered the CPCB to monitor the air pollution and also noise pollution. Then you had the Environmental Protection Act of 1986 that significantly widened the scope of CPCB. Now CPCB could take legal actions, could basically shut down the industries who are not meeting the norms. So CPCB is the nodal agency when it comes to controlling pollution, waste, effluents, management, etc. Now, here, in order to combat pollution, one of the major irritants in pollution is the case of solid waste. Solid waste management is something which in our country is completely crumbled. But that is the case across the world as well. But in our country, we generally associate large piles of garbage dumps that major cities are flooded with. Now, that solid waste management, an important component of it is plastic waste. Now, that is where the concept of EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, was introduced. Now, those of us who are not aware, listen to this carefully. What is this Extended Producer Responsibility? So, in simple terms, let's suppose you are an individual who is very clean in the sense that you have the best of the ideals. You envision yourself as the next Nobel Prize winner for the portion of climate change, and let's suppose you in your own mind are challenging Greta Thunberg as well, that I am a better individual, I am a more responsible. So you are that responsible individual that you don't throw waste anywhere. If anybody throws waste, tears start rolling down the eye. So you are very responsible, very ethical. You are walking down the streets in the midst of this summer, scorching heat. Now, you feel thirsty. Now, when you feel thirsty, you have two options in front of you. Either you buy a bottle of water from the nearby shop, get that thirst quenched and go along. Or the other option is that no, the bottle is made out of plastic, that is plastic pollution, better to faint and die rather than drinking water. So, normal individuals will choose the first option. That okay, I am thirsty, there is a chance of a heat stroke, I'll go to the nearest shop, I will buy a plastic bottle and I will drink water. Now, in that plastic bottle, it is written, crush the bottle after use and dispose of. So, what do? You are a responsible individual. You will crush the bottle and you will throw it off. Now, you have also generated a plastic waste. But is that plastic waste generated out of your own will? No. The bottling or the bottle manufacturer, for example, Aquafina, Bisleri, anyone that you consider, now they have brought that plastic bottle. That is why you have basically consumed that plastic bottle. Otherwise, you would not have. Otherwise, you would have carried bottle from your house itself. And then, as a consequence of that, you have basically disposed of the plastic. So, who is responsible for the waste? Indirectly, it is the producer. So, this aspect of extended producer responsibility, the mechanism of waste management, talks about the fact that look, in the entire value chain, you have the producer gives it to the wholesaler. Now, that wholesaler sells that product to the retailers, and from retailers, you have ethical individuals like you guys or all of us who buy it up. Consumers. And it is these consumers who generate waste. you have waste generation. So, while the responsibility for cleaning these wastes, while that can be laid at the foundation stone or at the doorstep of the municipal organization, that municipal organization is not doing its job. But like that, more and more waste will be generated. So that is where the producer is made accountable. The producer is made accountable to this waste generation, that you have to treat this waste. Let's suppose in a year you have produced 100 tons of plastic bottle. Then as per the new norms of the plastic waste management rules, you will be given a target that out of those 100 tons, 60 tons of plastic waste you have to recycle. You have to manage that waste. You have to remove it from the nature. So each of them have their targets. That is the concept of extended producer responsibility. Now, as per the new norms of the plastic waste management rules, the new norms amendments which were brought about in 2022, now there have been certain changes. Now, as compared to earlier, now the organizations have EPR targets. Then, when we talk about the producers, importers, all of those refurbishers of the plastic materials, now if they have to carry out the business, now they will have to register themselves on an online portal maintained by CPCB. So the various organizations, they will have to register their details in the online portal. What detail? What is the amount that they are manufacturing? What is the total amount that they have basically managed to collect back? What is the total amount of waste that they have basically ensured it is segregated, it is processed? So these details they have to maintain on the online portal. And that online portal is continuously monitored by CPCB. So either you choose to not to register yourself, then you will be operating in the black economy. You will be violating the norms, because CPCB will have that exchange of information from the other tax agencies also. So you will be violative of the norms, right? If you have to follow regulations, otherwise, if you want to operate a clean business, then the registration on the portal is also a must. Now, it was also found out that various different organizations, they have a target of this much waste that you have to manage, but they are unable to manage that much waste. Let's suppose PepsiCo has got a target of managing 50 tons of plastic waste, but they are unable to do so. So the targets are not fulfilled. Now, what do you do in that case? The entire aspect of legislation and the entire concept and objective goes out of the window. So what do? That is when the Plastic Waste Management Rules Amendment of 2022 brought about the concept of tradable certificates. Tradable certificates. It just works in the similar manner as the carbon credit and the carbon trade. What is it? Basically, the concept is simple, that let's suppose we talk about an organization like Pepsi. Now, Pepsi's specialty is not to collect waste, let's suppose from Delhi. That is not the specialty of Pepsi. Pepsi's specialty is to produce soft drinks, right? That is its specialty. Now, Pepsi has got a target to collect 60 tons, let's assume, of plastic waste. It is unable to do so. Now, simultaneously, let's suppose few of you have started a startup. You have got a distribution channel, you have got a collaboration with the local bodies, local authorities. You have initiated a startup of waste collection, waste management, and then utilization. Now, that is your specialty now, waste collection, waste management. So, let's suppose we name that company ABC. Now, this organization specializes in waste management. So, what it does, it basically collects, let's suppose, 200 tons and manages 200 tons of waste. right, of waste. Now, for managing these 200 tons of waste, ABC will get 200 credits. Right? Now, what will happen after earning credits? It is not like a school certificate which keeps on piling up. This is basically something which is payable, monetarily compensable. So here, Pepsi will pay ABC some money, get credits for 60 tons. Like that, Pepsi is able to fulfill its target as well. And at the same time, the ecosystem is cleaner, environment is made to be cleaner. So that is where the market mechanism comes into place. Now, when ABC has got 200 credits, this can be traded in the market. Tradable in market. Okay, so that brings about a greater efficiency because ABC is efficient in waste management. So more job creations can happen, better waste management can happen, the organizations can basically end up fulfilling their goals. It is a win-win situation for all. That is why it was hailed as a major step in ensuring cleanliness from plastic pollution across the country. Having said that, there were newspaper reports and articles which talked about these fake certificates being issued in Maharashtra and Gujarat. Now, that is why CPCB has initiated an audit that where these fake certificates are being or where are they being acquired from and how to stop that. So that is where this article talks about that CPCB is conducting an audit. It has also been found out that few of the creative individuals, they have hacked the system of CPCB itself. They have hacked this online portal and they have managed to generate a lot of these fake certificates on their own, which are being traded in the market. So imagine the impact it will have in the long run. So on the side of its own, CPCB is saying that we are investigating this since last October. And we are monitoring the system because the system is new. Just like at the time of implementation of GST, there was monitoring by the tax agencies, but action was not immediately taken. Some relaxation was provided. CPCB is saying we are providing that relaxation as of now, but we are keeping a keen eye, and that audit trail will eventually will reveal the culprits behind. So that is the argument and that is the article about. So out of this article, what do you have to know? CPCB, what is its role? Apex organization for controlling and monitoring of pollutants, emissions, effluents, etc. CPCB was established when? As per the Water Act of 1974, makes it a statutory organization. Then initially it had the role of only managing and controlling water pollution. 1981 Air Act brought the ambit of air and noise pollution as well within CPCB. Then Environment Protection Act of 1986 further expanded the role of CPCB. For example, any official who is taking an action to shut down an industry for the violation of environmental protection norms, they will be provided immunity. CPCB can prescribe the emission norms, can prescribe the effluent norms, and then if it is not met, can order the shutdown of the industries immediately. So that is the role of CPCB. Now CPCB brought in the entire aspect of plastic waste because that was becoming so huge. That is where the concept of EPR, extended producer responsibility, was introduced. Now, this plastic waste management rules, the amendment in 2022 brought about certain changes. First was all the organizations, they had to register on an online portal maintained by CPCB. Based upon their sales figure, manufacturing figure, they were given within a kind of an EPR target that 60% you have to regulate, 60% you have to collect back. Then after that, there was also the concept of tradable certificates being introduced as per the norms. Now, what is that concept of tradable certificate? Why it is important? It can lead to job generation, betterment of economy, more money flowing into the domestic sector, and better waste management, reduction of burden for the municipal organizations. Then they can pay attention on the other issues of the local bodies. So these are the various impacts. Okay, this is what you have to know. Now, the question which can be framed from here. What is the concept of extended producer responsibility? Discuss the importance of tradable certificates in management of plastic waste. So here, in the intro, answer the main part of the question directly. What is the concept of EPR? So EPR, or extended producer responsibility, puts the onus of managing the waste discharged in the environment on the producer. This is done in order to ensure sustained production and thereby ensure a eco-friendly method of production, right? That will be your brief introduction. Then in the body part, start with the basic preview and lay the basic backdrop of the second one. So if required, then immediately after the intro, put that flowchart also. That will make it much more articulate. It will improve the presentation. Which flowchart? Producer, wholesaler, retailer, consumer, waste. And put the arrow. It might appear simple, but it will be the encapsulation of your entire introduction. So that you do. In the body, talk about the problem of plastic pollution, how huge it is. And that is something which needs to be fought tooth and nail. Talk about that. But not more than for 2 sentences. After that, talk about the concept of tradable certificates. This was introduced as per the Plastic Waste Amendment Rules 2022. The Plastic Waste Management Amendment Rules 2022. Talk about that. Draw the flowchart if required about what is the concept of that tradable certificate. It will always make it more presentable. Write it in the bullet format after that what is the work or the benefit of this tradable certificate, how it can generate jobs, bring about efficiency, better management, all those factors you talk about. Then in the conclusion, talk about that fact that plastic waste is going to be the biggest challenge the world faces in the 21st century. Handling of that plastic waste at a domestic level is the need of the hour. Proper EPR and tradable certificate and market mechanisms introduced, they need to be followed to the T in order to ensure that the world remains a habitable place and India leads the way in that march. So like that, you can end the answer. Try to write it on your own and improve your answer writing. Now, few articles relevant for your prelims. Prevalence of non-communicable diseases tripled and infectious diseases doubled. So this is as per a study which has been indicated that it shows that non-communicable diseases, lifestyle diseases in particular, for example, when you consider, let's suppose the issues of sugar, hypertension, etc. Diabetes is a type 2 diabetes is a prevalent problem. Then you have hypertension, high blood pressure. All of these are increasing, due to which you have various issues such as cardiovascular strokes in younger population. Then let's suppose you have hemorrhages which are becoming very, very common. Now this article talks about the fact that it has been increasing overall across the country, even though as compared to 2014, all the various data pointers indicate that the 2018 numbers indicate a slight dip. Having said that, why is there an increase in the non-communicable disease? Why increase in NCDs? Non-communicable diseases. One is the lifestyle problem, lifestyle issue, which is impacting the younger generation or the younger population, right? Then other than that, you also have the fact that more people in certain states, you have the aging population which is more. States like Kerala figure in that list. So, certain states have aging population. Certain states have aging population. Now that aging population basically means that these particular states, they are unable to have, or they will indicate more of these lifestyle problems. Then also, it is an indicator of the fact that now you have better monitoring as compared to, let's suppose, early 2000s or late 1990s. Now you have better monitoring of these diseases. Now more people report this. Earlier people would just take it for granted that this is a part and parcel of life. So that also shows that on one end you have a betterment of the health system, but simultaneously disease burden is also increasing. So that is a problem. Now these are some of the issues. Overall, the infectious diseases, they are getting regional in nature and their morbidity is reducing. Okay, so here what do we need to do? Going ahead, always important that whenever you come across a problem, way forward also needs to be understood. The way forward is that better work-life management in many of the cases. Then other than that, the aspect of well-being like yoga, that needs to be promoted. When you talk about Khelo India and these kind of programs, that inculcation needs to be in the youth. The importance of having physical exercise, that needs to be inculcated so that healthy living is promoted. Okay, and that is where you have a way forward. Otherwise, the country can face the twin problems of nutrition. One is the malnutrition, where we already have one of the largest population experiencing malnutrition, and the other twin problem is the aspect of obesity. So that is also a lifestyle disease. Okay. Now, center reviews cases of Chandipura virus in 3 states, that is Gujarat, Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. In these 3 states, Chandipura virus is leading to a kind of acute encephalitis syndrome. So what is this Chandipura virus? And that is something we need to understand. So this virus is a virus that belongs to the Rhabdoviridae family, which includes the rabies virus. So that family of virus which also causes rabies. Transmitted by sandflies and mosquito, including the Aedes aegypti, which is also a vector for dengue. Right? So the same vector, the same mosquito. Nowadays, dengue is also very prevalent almost in all the urban areas of the country. So you have this Aedes aegypti along with sandflies and mosquito, but primarily by sandflies. The virus resides in the salivary glands of these insects and can be transmitted through the humans or the domestic animals through the bites. It can lead to encephalitis, inflammation of brain's active tissues. That is a major problem. And it is spread by the sandfly, which is abundant during the early monsoon season, and they play a role in the spread of this virus as well. So you have inflammation of swelling of the brain tissue, which we have already seen. Typical symptoms: rapid onset of fever, vomiting, altered mental state. Many of the time that slight hallucination comes because of very high fever, convulsions, diarrhea, neurological deficits and signs of meningeal irritation. Then the virus predominantly affects children under 15 years of age in rural areas where they are exposed to this mosquito, but now it is not restricted to rural areas only. Now it is spread to the urban areas as well. Most affected children experience rapid deterioration, with deaths occurring within 48 hours of hospital admission. Till now, you do not have a vaccinal cure for this particular infection by Chandipura virus. So that is why one needs to go for the clean conditions in the environment. One needs to go for the preventive measures, cleaning the environment, not allowing waste and waterlogging to happen in the nearby vicinity. These can be the curative measures. Now after that, tea industry seeks higher RODTEP rates. What is this RODTEP rate? It is basically remission of duties. Remission of duties and taxes on exported products. Now, Why is it the case that the tea industry is demanding this? Now already exporters are provided with this particular facility. Let's suppose I am an exporter. Let's suppose I export a particular good, let's suppose this pen. I export it to the international market. Now when I export it, this good will face certain duties in the country of import, isn't it? Now there I will have to pay more amount of money to fulfill those duties. Let's suppose a country like Vietnam has entered into a free trade agreement with countries of Europe. So a Vietnamese manufacturer will be able to send it at a much cheaper rate, while I will have to give more amount of money for sending the same thing. So that is why the government brings forward this scheme, whereby if let's suppose I am encountering certain duties, then I will get some amount of money in return, remission of duties and taxes on exported products. That remission, the amount that is gained, that the tea body is basically advocating, that amount needs to increase ever so slightly, so that the exports become competitive. At the same time, what is hampering tea exports is not only, so when you talk about the tea exports, that is one of the significant opportunities in our country. So what is hampering tea exports is not only the impact of duties, but also the fact that you have cheaper varieties of tea being grown in the region of Nepal and dumped into India. Now there you don't have anti-dumping duties. Anti-dumping duties basically means, let's suppose tomorrow Nepal decides to send 100 tons. Now that will immediately disrupt the local manufacturing. It will immediately disrupt the local market. So that is why many of the time government imposes anti-dumping duties. That next time when Nepal tries to export tea to India, at that point of time duties are charged, so that the price of Nepalese tea also grows higher. So that is where the anti-dumping duties are imposed. So the tea organization or the tea association has also demanded imposition of anti-dumping duties. Dumping duties on tea coming from Nepal. Now what their argument is, that this will boost the trade of the genuine Darjeeling tea, and that will do much good for the tea producers in the region of various different tea producing states of the country. So that is the entire argument put forward by the tea industry. Here you have to understand what is this RoDTEP, and then also what are the issues hampering tea exports in India, right? Now then the last article, animals acquire genes from bacteria that can produce antibiotics. Now this is a study which has appeared in the science section. Now you don't have to go into the detailed study of it. Very briefly, what you have to understand is that a group of small freshwater organisms the size of a strand of hair, what is also referred to as Deloid rotifers. Now these Deloid rotifers, they are freshwater species, right? And they have a simple formation where they have a tail, a mouth, a gut, all of this is present. This is Deloid rotifer. Now it has been found out that the study has basically indicated that this species, whenever it gets impacted by a fungal infection, it starts generating certain microbes, certain genetic impact that it has copied from the other microbes like bacterium, and generates antifungal and antimicrobial impact on its own. So it has got its self-sustaining disease fighting ability. That self-sustaining disease fighting ability is because it has managed to copy the DNA and the genes of the many of the microbes it has come in contact with. While animal species are known to copy each other's genetic codes, but then not to such a large scale. That is why it is considered to be a kind of a groundbreaking work. This opens up new area in the era of or in the region of pharmaceuticals, so that you can have better devising of medicines to fight the diseases, but also simultaneously to help us humans develop natural immunity over the ages. That will significantly alter the health parameters and human capital in many parts of the world. So here you need to know that Deloitte rotifer, size, very small size, has got a separate body anatomy of head, gut, tail, everything included. And here also these Deloitte rotifers, they copy the genetic codes of the bacterium to fight fungal diseases. Okay, so that is where we'll restrict the session here for today. I hope that you have liked the content of the video, and I hope that it has added some amount of information and knowledge to your existing set. Do revise, do try to write the answer on your own, and if you have liked the content, put that in the comment section, and don't forget to click on the like, share and the subscribe button. Do attend the conclave and the UPSC summit throughout the day. We shall be talking about the strategies to prepare for the civil services. Register for that summit by the link given in the description below. Till we meet again, take care of yourself. Goodbye. Take rest, relax, stay happy. Thank you.
NCERT books are unavoidable to crack the IAS exam. Not only is the content of these books authentic, but these books also help a civil services aspirant to build conceptual clarity. And most importantly, lots of questions in the civil services examination are directly asked from NCERT books. But the aspirants often find it difficult to cover these books, or worse, they even end up ignoring these books. We at Unacademy IAS English are going to make the reading and understanding of the NCERT books easier. We present NCERT Fundamentals course, a free initiative of Unacademy IAS English. What are the highlights of this program? Comprehensive coverage of the most relevant NCERT books for the civil services exam. Prelims and mains practice questions in each session to test your understanding of the fundamental concepts. This course begins from 12th of July every day at 6 p.m. right here on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the channel now.